Okay, so today we're going to be doing an arm comparison video between GK Tech arm, ISR arms, as well as PBM arms. I've done this video 4 times already, so we're going to go through this as fast as possible. I got some notes over here, so don't judge me if I look over at them, because I'm not trying to waste your time. First thing to go over, the rod ends. Rod ends are also known as heim joints, also known as spherical bearings. Whatever you want to call them, you can call them that because that's what they are. These are basically these metal rod ends right here. So on the stock arms are usually going to have typical rubber bushings. They have a lot of play. The benefit of the rod end, of course, is because they're made out of metal construction. They're adjustable. That's where you're going to get your adjustment from. So GK Tech, you got their rod end right here. It's actually a fairly nice rod end. So good, I approve of their rod end. Okay, ISR, good rod end as well. Okay, PBM, good rod end as well. Now, what are the flaws with these rod ends? Well, number one is you're going to want to have some type of bushing or seal around it, right, to keep moisture, debris, all that stuff out, as well as keep all your grease and everything inside to prevent rust and to keep your rod end flexing just as it should. Well, the thing is with GK Tech, it's super loose, flappy bird right here, and so what's bad with that is it's so loose that it's not blocking out all the moisture. The moisture is going to get in there. It's going to end up rusting out your whole rod end. It's not keeping all that stuff out. So basically, this bushing on the rod end isn't doing its job. So in my opinion, the rod end is good, but this outer seal is bad. Okay, ISR, that's what you're going to want to see right there. So it has a nice seal around it. Okay, no complaints about that. It's going to do its job perfectly fine. It has that on all the ISR rod ends. Solid. Okay, PBM, same thing with the ISR arm. Okay, it has a nice seal around there. It's going to keep all of your water and stuff out. Going to keep your nice rod end lubricated. However, on the PBM rear upper control arm, it doesn't have anything there. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that and why you can actually see a bit bare metal in it. For me, honestly, I'd rather see it sealed with a rubber seal just like it is on these arms. Okay, those are the rod ends and the rubber seals on them. So GK Tech, basically poor fitment, ISR good, PBM good on one arm, and I have no idea what they're doing on the other arm. Next thing, how are you going to adjust these arms? Well, you're going to adjust them, right, using this double adjuster in the center right there. That's going to thread them out, thread them in. Okay, so first thing, GK Tech. So you have a locking mechanism here, right? So that's what keeps your adjustment from moving. Well, on GK Tech, you only have this one clamp. Usually, typically, you're going to see one clamp here, one clamp on the rod end itself. That's what's going to keep it from moving. So overall on GK Tech, it doesn't really seem like they're doing a good job because I feel like this is going to get loose over time because it's only one clamp where there should be two. All right, ISR. ISR, you got your typical 2 jam nut design right here. This is what OEM manufacturers are using on their tie rod ends. This is the simplest design. This is the most reliable design. This is the easiest design to use. Okay, it simply locks it in place. It's not going in there. It's solid, super simple, easy, good, I approve. Okay, PBM, you got their locking collars, which is kind of like what GK using, the locking collar. So you got the dual locking collars as well as dual jam nuts. Okay, so these are both really effective methods of locking it. However, they put 2 of them together. Rather than going with one or the other, they put both of them together. So now they just overcomplicated what could have been a really, really simple and effective design. So I'm not a fan of that because they basically just overcomplicated what could have been a really simple process. And I've also talked to PBM owners of this arm too, and they say it's super pain, right, trying to adjust these, especially at the track. On top of that, how many wrenches are you going to need for this? Well, you're going to need one here, one there, you're going to need one here, one there, so that's already 4, right, bro? Okay, now you got one in the center, another one over here to keep it adjusted, so that's another 1, 2, right, okay? And then you got another different size right here. So you're talking about like 7, 8 total different wrenches on for this one little arm right here to adjust. That's a ridiculous amount of different sockets and wrenches you're going to need to adjust one arm. Compared to this, you're going to need maybe 2 or 3. That's it. Well, let's just ignore this. So basically, too long didn't listen. GK Tech, it's underbuilt as far as the locking mechanism go. I feel like this is going to slip up. ISR, you have a really reliable design over here. This is what OEM manufacturers are using for a super long time. It's the simplest, best, most reliable way to do it. And then PBM, they basically combine both of these locking mechanisms into one and just overcomplicated what could have been a really simple design. Next thing we're going to talk about are the welds. So on GK Tech has a nice start and stop in one point on their welds, right? So that means that they have this thing basically on a rotisserie, welded all the way around it, start and stop in one place. That's a really nice, really strong weld. These are actually CNC TIGged, I believe, reading off their website. These are really good welds. I approve of them. Next, you got ISR. ISR got your typical MIG welds right here. Okay, they're usually start and stop, nice long beads over here. That's what you're going to want to see. Of course, MIG welding usually isn't the prettiest, so that's kind of, I feel like they aren't as pretty as the other welds. But they are functional, they are nice long beads, that's what I want to see. So these are good too. GK Tech, ISR, good weld. On top of that, ISR went and did reinforcing plates, right? And that's going to help out with the fatigue on the welds themselves because they're going to have less stress on them. So again, you really don't want your welds to fail, which is why you're going to end up welding in these reinforcement plates in high fatigue areas so your welds don't end up cracking. All right, so PBM, you got some, well, let me explain to you. So as you can see here, these are a whole bunch of fish eyes, right? And so what fish eyes indicate is they actually tacked basically each one of these welds. Now a tack weld is a cold weld and a cold weld is a weak weld. So basically these are a whole bunch of weak welds on their arm. I'm not really sure why they're doing that, especially when they offer a lifetime warranty on their arm. Now, one thing I do have to say about that though, although the arm may be strong, you know, maybe the welds don't fail right now, welds are something that usually end up fatigue failing later on. So when you have a whole bunch of cold welds like that, that's something that's gonna have a higher chance of just breaking during normal driving conditions with vibration and just overall stress on the car with fatigue, which is why you can make the overall arm a weak design, but you make your welds beefy because the welds are the ones that are gonna end up fatigue cracking over time. So they did a whole bunch of these tacks with a MIG welder. Now the main advantage of doing that is that it looks pretty and it looks like you're stacking dimes even though you really aren't. And it's not as functional of a weld because again, you want your welds to be one nice long bead if you possibly can, because that means it's getting nice and hot, it's being continuous. That's a nice strong weld as you see on the ISR or the GK Tech. So basically they chose to make their welds look pretty rather than actually functional. So I'm not really approving of that. I don't think that should be happening. And of course, if you don't believe me on just looking at these things, they actually have a video of themselves that they posted themselves on YouTube of them actually tacking these arms together. So I'll probably put a link in the description if you want to see that. Something to note though is that on their toe arm, they do have start and stop beads over here every 1 or so inch. So on some arms, they are welding continuously, on some arms they are. So I'm not really sure what they're doing about that. Again, they're inconsistent with their rod ends as well and the seals that are going on them. So overall, I don't know. PBM's kind of just all over the place right now. But it is what it is. I'm just telling you the information. Okay, next thing. We got the welds done, right? So now we're going to talk about the overall strength of the arms. Well, I have stock arms in here for comparison. Stock arms, you see that they're made out of sheet metal? Yeah, you know why they're made out of sheet metal? Because they're supposed to act as a crumple zone in case of an accident. What does that mean? Well, basically, you want your arm to fold in half like a little spaghetti-o or something. That doesn't even make sense. But you want your arm to fold in half, and that way it absorbs the impact. You can throw away your arm, put in a new one, and you save your subframe, you save your knuckle, and you can go on driving with your day. Okay, GK Tech. Unfortunately, I don't have their rear control arms, which is really going to be the main comparison here because the tension rods OEM are pretty beefy and so are the front tension rods on GK Tech. So I'm unfortunately going to have to ignore them for this type of comparison. Okay, what you have here are ISR. As you can tell by ISR, they're using thinner tubing than PBM is. PBM, this is 1.5 inch material. 1.5 inch tubing right here. That's a formula drift regulation minimum requirement for roll cage material. They're putting roll cage material onto their arm, okay? Mind you, roll cage material on an arm that's supposed to act as a crumple zone. I want you to just compare, all right? Sheet metal, roll cage, sheet metal, roll cage. Now you're gonna be looking at me and be like, well, I want the stronger arm. Well, here's the thing, right? Your subframe is made out of sheet metal. So when you bolt such a super strong arm to sheet metal, what you're most likely gonna end up doing is messing up the sheet metal, and that sheet metal is your subframe. So let's say in a competitive circumstance, right? You tap a wall, right? Okay, so that tap, right? And now all that load gets transferred through these toe arms, for instance, which the toe arms are the most commonly damaged arms as far as drifting goes. So this toe arm right here probably isn't gonna break, and instead it's gonna ruin your subframe. This toe arm right here, however, it's most likely gonna snap in this point. As you can tell, that's where it's designed. That's kind of like the high stress area. So it'll snap right here in an impact, and that'll end up saving your subframe. It'll save your knuckle. If you have a good pit crew, maybe 2-3 guys, you can have a tow rod changed out and put a new wheel on, and you can do that in under 60 seconds. It's really not a big deal. Changing a subframe, however, that's what you're gonna have issue with. So basically, to sum that up, these arms are way overbuilt for their purpose. They don't need to be that overbuilt. I feel like they just overbuilt it because they could, and actually makes sense because guess what? PBM offers a lifetime warranty on their arms. So they don't want their arms to break. They don't want their arms to act as a crumple zone. They don't want their arms to save your subframe. They don't want their arms to be good in a competitive circumstance. What they want is they want to cover their butt so they can cover their warranty. Which is why their arms are so overly built. So basically, when you have these overbuilt arms, it's going to damage your subframe. You don't want that. You want to be competitive. You want something to be the failure point. You don't want the failure point to be in your subframe. You want to get a weaker arm. These arms are still stronger than stock. However, if you had to take the choice between getting this beefy one or this little bit less beefy one, then go with a little bit less beefy one. Something else that also gets affected with that, the weight. When you use such big material like this, you're going to end up adding a ton of weight to your car, which is exactly what these PBM arms do.
Unsprung weight,
yeah,
bruh. Big difference.
Okay, not only just regular weight, this is unsprung weight. Unsprung weight has a major effect on your handling. So as you can see right here, we're going to weigh all them. Yeah, let's compare. And the PBM arms come up significantly heavier than the ISR arms, as well as the OEM arms. So this is basically going to make your handling worse. Okay, too long, didn't read. Basically, these arms are way overbuilt for their purpose. They're doing it, what I assume, because they have a lifetime warranty on their arms. They're not going to act like a crumple zone. You're going to end up most likely messing up your frame, messing up your knuckle. This is not a very competitive arm. On top of that, it makes your handling worse. So just everything about their design on this, just a no-no in my opinion. Next thing, the actual design and clearance of the arms. Well, first thing, front tension rods. Front tension rods, usually you get angled ones like this, okay? Stock tension rod on the left, middle one, GK Tech, all the way to the right, you got your ISR. What usually happens when you get big angle, your wheel ends up hitting your tension rod. So what you do is you get angled tension rod like the GK Tech and the ISR. Well, as you'll notice, the GK Tech actually has less clearance than the ISR arm does. When I put this on the car, the GK Tech gets, it basically sits flush with the stock sway bar. So this ends up being at the same level your stock sway bar is. So as you can imagine where your stock sway bar is on a 240, that's going to be where your angle is going to limit at. The ISR actually goes in farther than the stock front sway bar goes. So you can actually remove your front sway bar, right? And then you'll actually be hitting this ISR front tension rod, and maybe you'll get another 5 more degrees of lock because of that. So that's very important in zero Ackerman setups, of course, big, you know, cut welded knuckle type setups. So as far as clearance goes, you got the ISR right here, which is, in my opinion, taking advantage. All right, next thing, toe arm. So toe arm, same thing. When you slam your car, right, you're doing the super hella lows. What ends up happening, right, if you run a super low car, you risk the chance of actually touching your like subframe stud for one of the bushings. So that's why they put this angle on it, right? So they can clear it because it's like right here, bro. So as you can tell right here, the ISR actually has a lot more clearance than this PBM does. So that's a good thing. You're not gonna really run the chance of hitting it whatsoever. Rear upper control arms. The rear upper control arms are basically the same. And the only thing that really makes this look like way more clearance than the ISR is just that this strange twist that they have on it. For some reason, when Nikita bought these, PBM told him that this was to get bigger axle clearance. I don't really see how it gets more axle clearance on the car, but we'll just go take their word on it. So as far as this instance, I'm going to call them at even as far as clearance. If not, PBM has a little bit more, and I just really can't tell because it has this twist in it for their own reasoning. Now we're going to have the paint. So GK Tech, you got nice clean paint. ISR, you got nice clean paint. And of course, let's not mind all the scratches because these have been installed on the car like 4 times because I've recorded this video 4 times. So PBM over here. Now PBM, these look all nice and shiny too. But then guess what? Oh, you go in the middle. Right here isn't even spray painted. Okay, they didn't paint the inside of this arm. Now I know what you're thinking. Well, Adele, or AKA Offbeat. Oh, this is going to be bolted to the car right here. You're not going to see it. That's true. You're not going to see it. However, the fact that this arm costs twice as much as a GK Tech or ISR arm, I don't know, I find it a little bit insulting, the fact that I'm paying twice as much for an arm that's not even painted as well as a half the price arm. That just seems kind of like a... It's like buying a Rolex and it's not fully painted on the back side. Like, that doesn't make sense. You should be painted if it's more expensive. Okay? Okay, last topic right here. This is what you're going to want to listen up to right here, all right? So, how they actually bolt up to the vehicle themselves. Well, these ISR front tension rods, these are the sexiest things I've ever installed in my life. Why? Because I've installed them like 5 or 6 times now, and I swear they go in better than stock. Okay, these things are just the most amazing, most beautiful arm in the world. As well as all the ISR, okay, they go in perfectly fine. PBM, they go in perfectly fine. GK Tech. Let's please have a little conversation right here. Okay, so GK Tech. We tried installing these parts on the cars, and guess what? They didn't bolt up. You know why they didn't bolt up? Well, because, so basically, this right here, okay, you got a GK Tech bolt, right? And a GK Tech bolt, well, now it fits in. You know why? Because we had to drill it out. Why do we have to drill it out? Because they didn't originally fit, as you can tell in this previous video that I made. These are the GK Tech supplied bolts. You notice how I can't put these bolts in? I can put it in from this side, and then it gets stuck right there. I try going in from here, it gets stuck right at the tip. I have calipers over here. This right here is at 11.9 millimeters. This is at 11.6 millimeters. So there's a 0.4 millimeter difference in their machining. Okay, so this means that this is a low quality machine work. Now you got that, right? Now you can actually fit some supplied GK Tech bolts into a GK Tech arm, which you would think that would be, you know, fitting in the first place. You go to put these on the car, and guess what? They don't fit in. And they don't fit in because they're hitting the sway bar end link holder on the front lower control arm. No other tension rod that I know of on the market, you have to modify your lower control arm whatsoever in order to get it to fit, and yet GK Tech one you do. Now next thing, you got these screws that are fitting into this locking collar right here. Now it already looks like it's fitting. Well, of course it does, but the thing is, in order to get these to fit, we actually kind of had to ram it in there first and then jammed it in, and, you know, catching some thread, and then actually pulled it together, because these things weren't made perfectly aligned with one another. So in order to get these to fit, it was a little bit of a challenge of forcing it together. So basically that being aligned basically means a poorly machined part, right? And a poorly machined part is basically a cheap part, which is why that's happening. All right, next thing. Now, now you're like, that's 3 things already, bro. Well, guess what? There's a 4th one, because it's a discount deal, basically, on errors on fitting your arms on your car. So the 4th error on this, the threads on this rod end were actually damaged when they, you know, came in originally. So what Nikita had to end up doing is chiseling away at this the threads on the rod end in order to get it to thread in here correctly. And then even with that finally threaded in there, it still had some bind, of course, doing it. So you got 4 issues on one arm as far as this. That doesn't end it, of course, right? Because we also got the extended little e-brake lever, and those had to be hammered in place because they were not fitting properly. On top of that, we got Motion Auto TV. Motion Auto TV installed a rear GK Tech Knuckle setup, and that thing apparently just sit a whole bunch of skewed. The caliper wasn't sitting flush. They needed to do some shaving on it.
All right, so I'm just showing you guys a little issue we had when we were installing this this rear drop knuckle kit. This is the version 1 GK Tech rear drop knuckle. You can see it's all hand welded and stuff like that. When we went to install the second set of brake calipers for this is the on the actual foot brake or whatever. But when we went to install this, we actually had to end up cutting it. You can see how close it is right there, but on the bottom one, it was actually rubbing. So hopefully you guys can see where it's kind of rubbing right there on the caliper, just right there. But so I actually had to grind off a little piece of the caliper on this backside just so it would actually fit. But so yeah, that was just a little issue we had when we were installing it. This is the version 1 knuckles. I guess there might not be an issue with the version 2s, but yeah.
Just overall, very poor fitment. So you got 3 for 3 on bad fitting products on this. But guess what? It gets better. I'm going to explain to you why this gets so much better. Because, you know, sensibly, you're going to be like, why didn't you contact GK Tech about it? Well, we did contact GK Tech about it, Nikita specifically. Nikita posted up on Zilvia, and he says, these GK Tech arms don't fit. It looks like I'm going to have to notch the lower control arm. GK Tech is like, oh, we got you, broski. Just send us an email, and we'll take care of you. Nikita goes ahead, emails GK Tech. GK Tech says, okay, broski, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to, drill out this hole in order for their own hardware to fit in their own arms. We're going to have to drill out their arm, okay? Number 2, we're going to have to notch our own lower control arms for a tension rod to fit, which again, no other arm does on the market. And then also, okay, they'd give Nikita $50 back, but he'd have to remove his Zilvia post about how the arms didn't fit. So basically, now you got a company that's paying people to keep their mouths shut about their parts not fitting. Why this is such a big issue is because we rely on a whole bunch of people in the community. Obviously, we're a very close-knit community, so we rely on each other for references for what parts fit, what parts don't fit, so that way we don't get screwed over, because everyone works very hard for their money, and so when I'm spending money on a part, I don't want to get screwed over. So when you're paying people to keep their mouth shut, you are basically paying to screw more people over in the future, right? So rather than actually fix the arm itself, make it bolt up like it should, have, you know, very good machine work on it, they'd rather continue screwing over more people, not fixing the actual issue themselves. And, you know, in the long run, you just kind of end up screwing over more people. Ethically, I think it's wrong, especially when you go into paying your own customers to keep their mouths shut about how the arms don't fit. So as far as GK Tech goes, GK Tech went from like, all right, they're making some solid parts, down to like all the way to... Okay, last category, of course, price. Okay, price. I got my notes. Now I'm just going to give the individual price of each arm, because that's how most people are going to buy it, individually like that. So we're just going to go individually with each company like that. Rather than me go through all these, I'm just going to pop up all the prices on the screen to the according parts, and you can see the totals for the parts. So the total, if you're buying each individual GK Tech arm separately, of course we don't have them all here, but just notice that, $661.91. For the ISR, basically this full set right here, you're looking at $595. Now for the PBM, you would get 2 more arms with it, of course. For PBM, you'd be looking at $930 for all 4. And that is with a straight tension rod, mind you, because PBM does not sell any angled front tension rod whatsoever. Okay, so you know what? I'm going to summarize it here in the next 30 seconds on basically these arms. Number 1 pick for me is going to be the ISR. It's the most budget friendly. I think you get the most bang for your buck as far as the clearance goes, as far as the weight goes, as far as, you know, the crumple zone, just everything overall. I really like what the ISR has right here. Second on my list is going to have to be PBM. PBM is an overall really nice arm. However, it is twice the price as the GK Tech or ISR, and it's just a very overly built design, even though they kind of cut back on their welds, which I see that as kind of like a failure point of fatiguing over time. But overall, it's still a very nice arm. It's just kind of like one of those really heavy, really overbuilt type of arms. So engineering standpoint of me, I'm not really a fan of that. And of course, they do make their stuff look really pretty, which is why I think that they that they do their welds like they do. And then lastly, of course, you got GK Tech. And the main thing with GK Tech is the arms don't really seem to fit. You got a business that, in my opinion, doesn't seem to be run the most ethically as it possibly can. So, all right, I think that about wraps it up. I hope you enjoyed this. If it was long, I do apologize. I tried wrestling this as hard as I can. This is the 4th time I'm making this video, hopefully the last time. Let me know what you guys think. If you have any questions or anything like that, leave it in the comments. I'll try and respond as fast as possible. I hope this was useful to you, and I hope that we can all come together as a community and start sharing experiences and then picking out the best parts that we possibly can pick out. All right, see you guys.